Part 1. Midnight in the The hospital never truly slept. Even at midnight, the emergency room hummed with quiet urgency, monitors beeping in uneven rhythms, the squeak of nurses' shoes on polished floors, hushed conversations drifting through thin curtains. Fluorescent lights washed everything in a pale glow that made time feel suspended, as if the world outside had stopped turning. Daniel Carter sat hunched on a hard plastic chair near the far wall, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He hadn't realized he was shaking until a tear slipped free and landed on the scuffed floor between his boots. He wiped his face quickly, ashamed, even though no one was looking at him. 37 years old. A grown man. A father. And yet here he was, crying like a child in the middle of the night. Behind the swinging doors marked authorized personnel only, his 6-year-old son lay in a hospital bed, hooked to machines Daniel didn't fully understand. Tubes, wires, numbers flashing too fast. Words like oxygen saturation and infection markers echoed in his head without meaning. All he knew was this: Noah had struggled to breathe tonight. And Daniel had never been so afraid in his life. Just hours earlier, they had been home, if the tiny apartment above the laundromat could be called that. Noah had been doing homework at the kitchen table, his small brow furrowed in concentration, when the coughing started. At first, Daniel told himself it was nothing. A cold. Seasonal allergies. But then Noah's face had gone pale. His breathing shallow. Panic had clawed its way into Daniel's chest so fast it stole his own breath. He'd carried his son down 3 flights of stairs, barefoot, keys rattling in his shaking hands. The drive to the hospital felt like it took a lifetime and no time at all. Now, Daniel waited. He stared at the double doors as if his will alone could force them to open. Please, he thought. Please let him be okay. Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it. He already knew what it would be. Another reminder from work, another overdue bill notification, another number he couldn't afford to answer. Since his wife, Emily, had died 3 years ago, life had become a careful balancing act that Daniel was constantly failing. Emily had been the steady one. The planner. The dreamer. Cancer had taken her in less than a year. One diagnosis. Then another. Then hospital rooms that smelled like antiseptic and heartbreak. Daniel had held her hand when the machines went quiet, whispering promises he hadn't known how to keep. "I'll take care of him," he'd said, voice breaking. "I promise." And he had tried. God, how he had tried. 2 jobs. One during the day at a warehouse, lifting boxes until his back screamed. Another at night driving for a delivery app, chasing tips and 5-star ratings until exhaustion blurred the road. Sleep came in fragments. Meals were rushed. Dreams were postponed indefinitely. Everything was for Noah. But tonight, sitting in that Daniel felt like he was failing again. What kind of father couldn't protect his own child from getting sick? What kind of man couldn't afford private insurance, or time off, or even certainty? A nurse walked past him without stopping. Another family argued quietly near the reception desk. Somewhere, a baby cried. Daniel pressed his palms into his eyes, trying to stop the tears. But they came anyway, hot, silent, unstoppable. "I'm sorry," he whispered to no one. "I'm so sorry, buddy." That was when he felt it. A presence. Not intrusive. Not sudden. Just there. Daniel looked up, startled, and saw a woman standing a few feet away. She was tall, dressed in a dark coat that looked far too elegant for the ER. Her silver blonde hair was pulled back neatly, her posture composed, but her eyes, those told a different story. They were tired. Not the kind of tired sleep could fix, but the deep, enduring exhaustion of someone who had lived through something that never truly left them. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said softly. Her voice was calm, warm. "But, are you all right?" Daniel's instinct was to say yes. To brush it off. To pretend he hadn't just been breaking apart in public. But the words wouldn't come. He swallowed hard and shook his head. "My son," he managed. "He's back there." The woman nodded slowly, as if she already understood. "I'm waiting too," she said. Different situation. Same fear. Daniel studied her now, really looked. There was something about her that suggested wealth without flaunting it. The quality of her coat. The quiet confidence. The absence of panic in her movements. Later, he would learn her name. Margaret Hale. Billionaire widow. Philanthropist. A woman whose name appeared on buildings and donation plaques across the city. But in that moment, she was just another human being in a hospital hallway at midnight. She gestured toward the empty chair beside him. "May I?" Daniel nodded. She sat, folding her hands in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavy, shared. Then she said quietly, "I lost my husband in a hospital like this." Daniel's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," he said instinctively. She offered a faint smile. "Thank you. It was years ago. But some nights, it feels like yesterday." She turned her gaze toward the doors. "You never forget what it's like to sit and wait. To wonder if your life is about to split into before and after." Daniel felt another tear slip free. "That's exactly it," he whispered. Margaret looked at him then, really looked. At the worn jacket, the calloused hands, the raw grief he wasn't hiding anymore. "I know that pain too," she said. And for the first time since the ambulance ride, Daniel didn't feel completely alone. Part 2, the longest waiting hour. Time moved strangely after that. Minutes stretched into something heavier, thicker, as if the air itself resisted motion. Daniel and Margaret sat side by side, separated by different lives but united by the same unbearable uncertainty. Every time the double doors opened, Daniel's heart leapt into his throat, only to sink again when it wasn't a doctor calling his name. Margaret noticed. "You don't have to hold it together," she said gently. "Not here." Daniel let out a shaky breath. "I don't know how not to." She nodded, understanding in a way that felt earned. "You learn. Or you pretend to. Until one night, you can't anymore." That was when Daniel spoke. Really spoke. "He's all I have," he said quietly. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. It happened fast. One minute we were planning Noah's first grade party, the next, I was signing papers I didn't understand." Margaret's hands tightened in her lap, but she didn't interrupt. "I promised her I'd be enough," Daniel continued. "That I'd take care of him. And most days, I think I am. I work, I cook, I help with homework, I read him stories even when I'm exhausted. But nights like this," his voice broke. "They make you feel so small." Margaret turned to him. "Loving someone that deeply will always make you feel small," she said. "And brave." At the same time, before Daniel could respond, a nurse appeared in the doorway and called his name. "Mr. Carter." Daniel was on his feet instantly. "Yes, that's me. Your son is stable," she said, and Daniel nearly collapsed with relief. "The doctor will explain everything, but you can see him now." Daniel didn't remember thanking her. He only remembered rushing through the doors, heart pounding. Noah lay in the bed, small against the crisp white sheets. An oxygen tube rested beneath his nose, and his chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. His eyes fluttered open when Daniel approached. "Daddy," he whispered. "I'm here, buddy," Daniel said, voice trembling as he took his son's hand. "I'm right here." Noah's fingers curled weakly around his. "Did I scare you?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Yeah," he admitted softly. "But you're okay now. That's what matters." The doctor explained it was a severe asthma complication triggered by an infection, serious but manageable with treatment. Noah would need monitoring, medication, follow-ups. Daniel nodded at all the right moments, but one thought echoed louder than the rest. "How am I going to pay for this?" When Daniel stepped back into the waiting area, Margaret was still there. She rose when she saw his face. "He's breathing," Daniel said, emotion flooding his voice. "He's stable." Margaret smiled. This time, it reached her eyes. "I'm very glad." They sat again, quieter now, exhaustion settling in. Daniel noticed her phone light up with unread messages. Names he didn't recognize. Titles that hinted at a world far removed from his own. "You don't have to stay," he said. "You've already." "I want to," she replied simply. After a pause, she added, "My husband was a powerful man. Brilliant. Wealthy. The world thought he was untouchable. But illness doesn't care about titles." She exhaled slowly. "When he died, I learned something important. Money can fix many things, but it can't hold your hand in the dark unless you choose to use it that way." Daniel frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Margaret met his gaze. "I mean I spent years building walls around my grief. Tonight reminded me why I stopped doing that." A billing clerk appeared near the desk, calling Daniel's name again, this time with a clipboard. Daniel's shoulders slumped before he even stood. "I'll be right back," he said to Margaret. The clerk spoke in numbers and forms and insurance codes. Daniel nodded, heart sinking with every sentence. The total blurred together, but it was far more than he had. "I'll figure something out," he murmured. Margaret had overheard. She waited until the clerk left before speaking. "Daniel," she said carefully, "may I ask you something personal?" He hesitated, then nodded. "If help were offered," she said, "would you accept it?" Daniel stiffened. Pride flared, sharp, instinctive. "I don't want charity." "I didn't say charity," Margaret replied gently. "I said help." He looked away. "I've spent my whole life trying not to owe anyone anything." Margaret leaned closer, her voice low but firm. "Sometimes, accepting help isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do for the people you love." Silence hung between them. Then Daniel whispered, "I don't know how to say yes." Margaret reached into her coat and handed him a simple white card. No flashy logo. Just a name and a number. "Think of it as two people who met on the worst night of their lives," she said. Nothing more. Before Daniel could respond, a man in a tailored suit approached her, concern etched on his face. "Mrs. Hale," he said quietly. "The car is ready." Daniel's breath caught. Hale. The name clicked. He looked at her, really looked, and suddenly the pieces aligned. "You're Margaret Hale," he said slowly. She gave a small, almost apologetic smile. "Yes." Daniel stared, stunned. The billionaire widow. The woman whose donations funded half the children's wing they were sitting in. "I didn't," he shook his head. "I didn't know." "I know," she said softly. "That's why tonight mattered." She stood, adjusting her coat. "I won't intrude further." "But Daniel," she paused. "You're a good father. No amount of money can buy that." She hesitated, then added, "I hope our paths cross again." After she left, Daniel sat alone, the card warm in his hand. Hours later, as dawn crept pale and quiet through the hospital windows, Daniel stood beside No's bed. His son slept peacefully now. Daniel brushed a hand through No's hair and whispered, "We're going to be okay." For the first time in years, he believed it. And somewhere in the city, a billionaire widow stared out at the waking skyline, knowing her life had shifted too. Because sometimes, healing begins not with wealth, but with shared pain at midnight in an ER.